So we're going to keep talking about this fireworks answer. And I just want to review a couple of answers with you that were given. I'm not naming names here, so no need for anyone to be embarrassed. And again, it's a learning process. So what I look at, my role is to coach you. I'm really trying to coach you so that you can learn how to think critically and figure this out for yourself. So I'm going to give you some examples. So let's take a look. I'm going to read off a couple of the answers that were given, and then let's talk about them. So one person said, the fireworks falls under speculative risk. While there would be danger or harm if the fireworks to misfire, there's also a possibility of gain if the fireworks had no issues. Therefore, the possibility of gain makes a fireworks show a speculative risk. Now, first of all, this explanation is not referring to a risk in the production design when misfiring is mentioned. So misfiring would actually then cause potential danger. In fact, that's what they mentioned, danger or harm to somebody. So that would actually fall under the risk domain under health and safety of the attendees. So the risk would be that someone would get hurt from misfiring of a fireworks. So what's happened is the person picked the design domain, the production design management functional unit, but then the risk is referring to something in another domain. So this is not a cohesive answer. And really, given on a final exam, for example, I was very lax this test because I know you're still learning, and I would not have given credit for picking the risk correctly. I didn't take points off for choosing a risk that was outside of the domain that you chose. Now, that was very kind of me. No, but really, it's true. I'm just trying to get you to be able to see how you can determine this. So the misfiring here also, I would actually say if someone was then talking about the fireworks not working properly and not going off properly and then ruining a show, that would fall under the operations domain. And then you'll see the functional unit under the operations domain is technical management. And that has to do with just that, the technicalities of how the design is then technically implemented in the operations domain. So then your risk would be misfiring of fireworks. And then you could take it a step further, though I didn't ask you to do it, and you could look at a tool that would help you figure out how to avoid that risk. But we're just going to stick right now on whether that would be speculative or absolute. So misfiring of fireworks. Now, just a misfiring of fireworks, I don't know any fireworks show, there's been very few that I've gone to, that there hasn't been a misfiring somehow. Sometimes you don't really, it doesn't really affect the show. It's just kind of a dud. It goes up a little bit and comes down. Maybe it doesn't whistle all the way up. It's not really a deal breaker, right? But if 50%, I'd say if more than 20% of your fireworks are duds, now it becomes an absolute risk. Because now people are disappointed. They keep sitting there and it goes, and nothing happens. They're there for a show. So it's all how you define the risk. So this is why from now on, and again with your peer reviews, your peers, when they wrote their discussion, they didn't have this lecture yet. And maybe they didn't get it. So I'm not taking points off, again, from someone not identifying it correctly, except you, when you do the peer review. Now that you've had this lecture, you should be able to figure out, oh, that risk doesn't fall under design domain. That's under the technical management in the operations domain. So I want you to be able to point out your peers' errors, okay? And not in a rude way, but what you would do is just say, oh, I would have chosen this domain and functional unit because as I read the article, the risk is whatever that risk is and make sure it falls into that functional unit that you're making the argument for. So let's read another one. Let me just tell you another one. Another answer was, the potential risk associated with fireworks usage is speculative. If the fireworks are set off perfectly without any hiccups, then there's no risk of loss. The attendees will enjoy the fireworks and they'll make the event better. Meaning the fireworks will make the event better. If the fireworks are set off improperly and fly the wrong direction, or if it's too windy and the sparks blow onto a rooftop or into the crowd, there's a potential for loss, either from bodily injury to an attendee or from property damage. So even though they're also talking about fireworks, fireworks misfiring, now this person is actually not talking about the operations domain and the technical aspect. What they've actually moved into is the risk domain with health and safety, because they're talking about the risk of it being windy outside and that's going to blow sparks and cause fire, or it could hit someone and cause bodily injury. So that's health and safety. And so again, even though the person kind of identified something that would go wrong, and it sounds a lot like what the other person said, the way their explanation was of the risk, it pushed it into the risk domain and health and safety. So I gave you this example because I want you to see how one thing can be so similar to another, but the way it's explained totally changes the domain and the functional unit. And then, of course, fire and bodily injury are always absolute risks. And let me give you another one right here. It says, the potential risk associated with fireworks is an absolute risk because if something doesn't go as planned, there's no option for gain. This could lead to attendees being injured. Now, this person didn't really explain what would go wrong. So I would not give you full points. I mean, in the injured, person could potentially be injured. You're alluding to what you're saying, but I really want you to be clear and concise. So again, this person also went into the risk domain and health and safety, and they were correct that it was absolute. So, where you're getting people giving speculative when it's really an absolute, they've jumped into the wrong domain, these things. So you really want to make sure your domain and functional unit match your risk to which you're referring. And then as you explain your risk, make sure, double check that risk actually does fall into that domain and functional unit. So let me read one more thing for you here. And